Hi, and welcome back to another video. And today I will once again be talking about the 2026 Texas Senate election, and especially the Republican primary. Now, the last time I talked about this race was about 3 weeks ago, because we now finally have some more polling here that just came out yesterday and some more a couple days ago. So, the first polling we've got here between the Republican Senator incumbent, Paxton, or Cornyn, and then his challenger, who is the current Attorney General, or the State Attorney General of Texas, Paxton, who is very controversial, but so far seems to be having the momentum. As we saw in the beginning of last month, or a little bit towards the middle of last month, we saw Paxton have this 13-point lead. Then we saw that lead go down to 9 points. So, and now we recently got some more two polls where Paxton's lead has now increased to 22 points, and the Real Clear Politics average now has Paxton at a 14-point lead. So this is not looking good for John Cornyn, who, I remind you, has been a Texas Republican senator since George Bush was in office, since 2002. So he has been around for a long time, and it looks like that the Republican Party, or Republican voters in Texas, may finally be interested in getting rid of him and going for somebody new. This seems probably in line with the whole anti-oath thing within both parties. It's in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We saw it with Biden. We've seen it with a lot of House Democrats that are really old and they're passing away, and there's a lot of frustration with that. And it's not within just the Democratic Party voters. We're seeing it now with Republican Party voters, where this is a good example. If these polls are accurate, and I'm certain that they are, YouGov's a very good poll. These are very good polls. I am very certain that Paxton is winning this primary. And unless Cornyn drops out here, he is going to lose this primary by a huge margin. As you can see here, he is down in the Real Clear Politics average by 14 points. He is trailing this race by 14 points. Now, there is room for there's time for him to make up, this trail that he's trailing behind Paxton here. But obviously, like, time is running out here. He has a year and a half. He has a lot of time, but the clock is ticking. Unless he drops out and another candidate comes in and he endorses him. But I don't think that's going to be happening. So far, that's probably not going to be happening. Cornyn seems to be very big on running for re-election. He thinks he can beat Paxton, but so far the numbers say otherwise, right? You have Paxton at 48.3%, and you have Cornyn at 33.7%. Not looking good for John Cornyn, and it is only going to get worse. Now, we really don't have much polls here, but the polls that we do have suggest that Paxton will easily win this primary. Now, can Paxton win a general election? I'd say probably, as controversial as the other Texas senator, Ted Cruz was able to win his Texas Senate race last year by a pretty big margin, much bigger than people expected, since Ted Cruz did have that really poor performance re-election win in 2018, where he was considered a vulnerable Republican senator. However, I think that's no longer the case here. But Cornyn is very, very vulnerable. He's old, he's very unpopular, and even within his own party. So he probably will be one Republican senator that will not be joining his colleagues in 2027. So, yeah, you really do have Cornyn here, down in the polling, not looking good for, him in the primary. And even his internals, I talked about this in my previous video, that even in his internals, right, they are even suggesting that he is trailing Paxton by huge margins. Now, it could be 14 points, or it could be much more. We could see Paxton even surge even more within the next coming months here, or the next year and a half, or we could see Cornyn make a comeback. Either way, it's really hard to tell, and it's way too early, but still. These polls show great news for the Paxton campaign and horrible news for the Cornyn campaign. And like I said, it's way too early to predict anything, but so far, it's looking great for Paxton. And if this sort of thing continues, we could see Paxton as probably the next Republican senator of Texas. The next Republican senator of Texas. So, yeah, and like I've said, Cornyn has been around in the Senate for a really long time, right? You had Donald Trump winning this state by 13 points. And like I said last year, Ted Cruz was able to win his re-election by a comfortable margin of 8 points here. Now, the last time Cornyn was on the ballot here, which I believe would be, no, it would be 2020. It would be 2020. So the last time he, was able to, or he was on the ballot here in Texas, was in 2020, where Cornyn won by almost 10 points. Not exactly 10 points, a little under, but 9 points. We've already discussed his past election wins before. Here, let's see, in 2014, he won by 27 points. Now this year was a midterm year where it went very well for the Republican Party. Barack Obama was president. However, there was record low turnout, and it's something Barack Obama, has constantly talked about. Where it's one of the things he regrets most, or one of the many things he regrets as president of the United States. But still, this election year, this midterm year, went well for Republicans. There was record low turnout. It went really bad for the Democrats, and eventually 2 years later, we saw Donald Trump be elected as president when he defeated Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. And then, you skip 6 years later. Cornyn, underperforms his previous margin. I mean, it's 6 years. A lot of things can happen. Underperforms. And now we are going to be seeing Cornyn on the ballot once again in 2026. And he most likely will not make it for this primary if those polls are accurate. If Cornyn makes it for the primary, I think that there is a very good chance that there could be, if the Democrats nominate the right candidate here, then I think there's a good chance at, maybe there being some sort of upset. But still, Cornyn could squeeze through, but still, he seems to be, especially from the Republican Party, a very weak candidate and someone who's very unpopular on both sides. Now, Democrats have a lot of candidates to choose from here, right? They have Colin Elrod, who ran against Ted Cruz last year. They have Beto O'Rourke, who ran for Texas Senate against Ted Cruz in 2018. And then he ran against Abbott for governor in 2024. He did not make either of those races. So Democrats could skip over him, but he is another option. You also have some of these other candidates here that are a little less known, right? You have some of these other candidates here. But still, this race is, in February of 2025, it was a solid R state. In February 13th, it was a solid R state. But now, in March, it became likely R. And now, in April, it became lean R. So, it'll be interesting to, once we get another update for these predictions here, if we get one this month of June of 2025, it'll be interesting to see if it stays as lean R, if it goes up to likely R, or if, it goes down even more. And the shift here, because it is shifting left here, I'm not saying that, that guarantees a win for Democrats in the Texas Senate race. No, it is very likely that Texas will remain red here on, Senate level through state level. But if all the things we're seeing happening here with the job cuts, with everything that's happening, with the unpopularity of the Trump administration, things could get very competitive. And things like we saw last year, where Ted Cruz was able to easily win his Senate race, this is something that we might not see, right? Ted Cruz was able to win by 8 points. People thought it was going to be much closer than that, but it wasn't. Colin Elrod got 44%, Ted Cruz got 53%. We could see something much closer than 8 points. And Ted Cruz winning by 8 points is actually still an underperformance if you compare it to, his previous performance in 2018, or even, right? Oopsies. Or even, Cornyn winning by 9 points. Cruz winning by 8 points is still an underperformance compared to Cornyn's margin win in 2020, winning by 9.6 points, almost 10. So something to, note here, that if anything else goes south, there was just last night where you had the Trump and Elon breakup thing, the chaos, there was everything going on with Twitter. If something like that keeps happening here, keeps gaining media attention, that could make Texas possibly competitive. I think this Senate race will probably be competitive because especially if Paxton wins the primary here. He is also a very controversial candidate. I don't know about weak candidate, but he's going to be very controversial and somebody the Democrats, especially in Texas, could go after. You know, he has a scandal. He was impeached by the Texas House. However, he was acquitted in the Senate, but still, there's a lot of stuff that, is on the negative side for him that the Democrats would be able to use for their advantage. But so far, it looks like that he is currently on set to win this primary here, and if he does, we'll see what some we'll see what some head-to-head polls look like for Paxton. But until we get those, compared to Paxton or Cornyn, it is still unlikely to really know so far if Paxton or Cornyn would be able to win a general election or not. I assume probably, but it will probably get very competitive for possibly both of them. But anyways, until we get some polling, we can never know for sure. But once we do, I'll be make sure to update you guys. But anyways, that is the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.